The morning of April 10th, 1912, was golden. Southampton harbour buzzed with the kind of electricity that only history makes. Thousands lined the docks, not just to wave goodbye, but to witness, to say someday to their grandchildren, I was there, I saw her, and she was worth seeing. The RMS Titanic stood at the pier like a steel cathedral, black hull gleaming, 4 great funnels pointing at heaven as if daring God himself to take notice. Journalists scribbled furiously. Photographers snapped. A small boy sitting on his father's shoulders pointed and said simply, "It's the biggest thing in the world." He wasn't wrong. On the first-class promenade deck, a wealthy American businessman named Mr. Hartley straightened his cufflinks and watched the coastline shrink behind him. He turned to his wife with a satisfied smile. "You were worried," he said. "I'm always worried," she replied. "This time," he said, patting the iron railing with the confidence of a man patting a bank vault, "worry is simply wasted energy. This ship cannot sink. It's not a matter of opinion. It's a matter of engineering. Science, my dear. Cold, reliable science." His wife looked at the railing, then at the sea, then said nothing. She kept her life jacket close to the bed all 4 nights. He never once unpacked his. Down in the telegraph room, radio operator Jack Phillips was drowning in messages, but not distress calls. Not yet. They were social messages. First-class passengers sending telegrams to friends in New York. Arriving Wednesday. Reserve table at Delmonico's. Weather divine. Ship extraordinary. Several ice warnings had come in from nearby vessels during the day. Phillips dutifully passed them to the bridge. The bridge noted them, filed them, and the Titanic, without slowing a single revolution of her massive propellers, sailed on. After all, she was the Titanic. Speed was her glory. Speed was the whole point. That evening, Captain Smith dined in first class, as he had the 3 nights before. He was 62 years old, silver-bearded, magnetic, the kind of man who made people feel safe simply by being in the room. He had sailed over 2 million miles in his career. He had never lost a ship. Why would this one be any different? A woman at the table asked him, almost playfully, whether the ice warnings concerned him. He laughed warmly. "My dear," he said, lifting his wineglass, "I have been sailing these waters for 40 years. Ice is as much a part of the North Atlantic as the water itself. And this ship—" He paused, glancing around the magnificent saloon at the chandeliers and the laughter and the gleaming silver. "This ship was built to laugh at the North Atlantic." The table applauded lightly. Someone toasted, "To the Titanic!" Everyone drank. In the crow's nest, high above all that laughter, Lookout Frederick Fleet hunched his collar against the bitter cold and stared into the blackest night he had ever seen. No moon, no wind, no waves, which, he knew, was the worst possible luck. Waves would have showed white foam at the base of any berg. Moonlight would have caught the ice. But tonight, the sea was a perfect black mirror, hiding everything. And the binoculars were still missing, still locked away somewhere, still unreplaced. Fleet peered with nothing but 2 tired human eyes into 2 million square miles of darkness, and he thought, someone should slow this ship down. He thought about reporting it. Then he thought about who he was, a lookout, a nobody, and who they were, the builders, the captain, the engineers who had proclaimed this vessel unsinkable to every newspaper in the world. He kept his mouth shut and kept watching. At 11:39 p.m., he saw it. A shape, dark, massive, dead ahead. His hand hit the bell 3 times. "Iceberg, right ahead." On the bridge, Murdoch reacted instantly. Hard a starboard, engines full astern, and for a breathless few seconds, it seemed like it might be enough. The bow began to swing. The berg loomed and then seemed to slide left. Then came the sound. Not an explosion, not a crash. Something quieter, almost gentle. A long, low, grinding shudder that ran the length of the ship like a sigh. Glasses rattled in the dining room. Card players looked up from their hands. A sleeping woman in third class stirred and turned over. Below the waterline, unseen by anyone, a 300-foot gash opened along the starboard hull. The sea, cold, patient, and completely indifferent to human engineering, began to pour in. Thomas Andrews, the ship's designer, was called to inspect the damage. He walked the lower decks with a lamp and a clipboard and a growing horror in his chest. He did the mathematics in his head. He did them again, hoping for a different answer. He found Captain Smith on the bridge. The two men stepped aside. Andrews spoke quietly, so no one else could hear. "She'll sink," he said. "In 2 hours, perhaps less." Smith stared at him. "You're certain?" Andrews nodded. His face was the face of a man watching his greatest creation become his greatest mistake. For a long moment, Smith said nothing. He stood at the window of the bridge and looked out at the sea. The same sea he had sailed confidently for 4 decades, the same sea he had laughed about at dinner barely 2 hours ago. Then he straightened his jacket, turned to his officers, and said quietly, "Send the distress call. Begin loading the lifeboats." He said it like a man who had finally, fully, woken up. But waking up, as the Titanic was teaching the world that night, sometimes comes too late. The lifeboats were lowered half-empty into the darkness. The band played on the deck as the boat dipped lower and lower. 1,500 people clung to railings, to ropes, to each other, as the stern climbed higher into the frozen sky. And the great ship, the unsinkable ship, the scientific marvel, the steel cathedral that had made a small boy point in wonder, cracked in two with a sound like the world breaking, and was gone. The North Atlantic closed over her in minutes. The chandeliers, the wine glasses, the unread ice warnings, the unpackaged life jackets, the overconfident smiles, all of it, swallowed by the same cold, dark water that had never, not for one single moment, believed she was unsinkable. The ocean doesn't care what the newspapers say. It never did. Like, subscribe, and click the bell icon for more stories.